Hey, Maggie here. Watch me over the shoulder as I help a client map out his entire automations for one part of his process that's taking a lot of time, mental energy, and cost quite a bit. And it's something that all 6 and 7 figure business owners should have as automated as possible. So I'm going to walk you through how to do that and how that can save you and your team a lot of time and give your clients a much better experience. So let's go. So the client came to me saying that he was getting a bit overwhelmed. There was a lot of happening with his client onboarding process and with his post client process as well. So the question he actually came to me with was, what's the tech stack I need to use for this? And that's the wrong question. If you're looking at how can we automate something in our business, or hey, I feel I'm doing something that's taking me a lot of time that it probably shouldn't, the first thing I do is we map out what does the process actually look like. I use Figma. You can use whatever you want. You can draw this out on paper. It doesn't really matter. I quite like Figma for this. So what we want to do is basically map out the process. So in this case, it was, let's say we start with a client pays. And then what happens, right? Then we actually want them to get a welcome email, right? And sometimes you might actually not know it's a welcome email because you go, all right, so they pay, then we want to send the contract, they need to sign it, we need to send them like the Zoom link, the onboarding call link or whatever. So actually I'm going to do that differently because we do have a welcome email. However, there's also a contract, right? And I'm going to show you something in a second that, well, I don't know if it's going to blow your mind and blow my client's mind, which is always awesome. What we want to do is, so firstly, let's map this out. Contract signed. So we're first mapping out the steps, right? We've got client pays. They receive the contract. They sign the contract. They get a welcome email. Then you might have, in his case, they had a member of staff, a team member reaches out. And then this is a trademark lawyer. So trademark process gets started. Then the client finishes because it's like one process. But the whole issue was that they actually want to have a next step for the client with a kind of nurture sequence that would happen over a few months after the client finished to make sure that they would, buy more trademarks from them. So as I'm kind of mapping this out, as you can see, I'm first just like putting in all the steps. What are the steps that need to happen? I always think it's so much easier to do this with someone else because a lot of the time we're working on automations or processes, we have like, here's the thing that we have right now that's probably not really working the way we want it to. Here's a vision of what we want, but it can feel really complex and really complicated. And then it's really hard to kind of bridge that gap. So that's why I'm always like, let's start here and map out the steps. What I'm going to go and do is I'm going to change every action point into a different shape. So that's an action point. That's an action point. This is an action point. All right. Looks weird. Fine. Whatever. You get it. Then I'm going to change everything that can be automated into green. All right. So we start seeing, oh, that's an automation. That's an automation. That's an automation. This is an automation, right? So as we start doing this, we can actually map things out a little bit more. So if a client pays, how does the contract get sent out? So actually my client was doing this quite manually because they would have like a custom proposal over here. Then they would need a custom contract. So this step took some time, took some energy, and took some manual from the team. So the first thing I always look at here as well is, now that we have like a rough process, what can be simplified? What does not actually have to happen? So for example, here, does the contract actually have to be a manual step? Can we not standardize this process? Like, great, you're not going to get a custom trademark set up, or you can get a custom, but it still has a standard contract attached. That's up to my client to figure out. And if he's cool with doing a standard contract, then this whole step can be automated. And the way it can be automated is through a tag plus Zapier. That's pretty much it. It does depend on your tech stack. So for example, for me, I use Infusionsoft. So I do use Zapier for certain things, but we also use Plus This a lot, which is a special like automation thing for Infusionsoft. For most people, like this client was using ConvertKit for email marketing, ClickFunnels, Go High Level, and a CRM system. It's like, yeah, but we can connect those things just with Zapier. Client pays, they get tagged in ConvertKit with bot, trademark. So that's a Zapier integration. That tag triggers their DocuSign or HelloSign or contract software with, hey, client bot trademark needs to sign contract. That can trigger the contract. So this is an automation. And then we've got another tag plus Zapier over here, which is contract has been signed, right? So that's over here. And this tag that's triggered by the contract getting signed triggers the welcome email or the welcome sequence, actually. I'm going to change that. I think a welcome email is good, but I'm always a big fan of welcome sequences because there's like more steps involved for people, especially if you do like high ticket, especially if you do like group programs, masterminds. I think it's better having a welcome sequence than just one email. So then you've got your team member reaching out. You can still choose to have this as a manual step, but again, what you can do is having a tag over here. For the team member reaching out. So what we for example, what we do is if the contract gets signed, the client gets tagged, signed contract, that sets off the welcome sequence, but it also sets off, we have a Maggie bot in our Slack channel. So Zapier then also tells Slack, hey, Sarah just became, signed her contract and became a client. Great. Let's fire off the next step. So for example, here, we don't have a manual step of a team member reaching out. We actually have a manual step of that we send something in the mail for them. And this tag creates a message in our Slack channel for client onboarding and tags the right person to say, hey, so-and-so just signed, here's their address, here's what to go do next. So inside Slack, we get a notification of that task that needs to happen. So that's a small thing, but honestly, it makes our life much easier. So the other thing I wanted to show you was the client onboarding playbook that I have. This is inside my Evergreen Empire Accelerator program. So you can see I have like certain tools that we recommend, but the playbook is the big thing, right? This is the playbook where we map out a very simple systems flow, kind of like what I just showed you, but it's a little bit more focused on the emails because every client has a different kind of tech stack or tech setup. So we do want to change that. And I think it's really important to have like a welcome email flow, not just one email. But the first email is really important because the first email is like, hey, here's the link, here's the community, here's the next step, here's what to expect, and any kind of important information. But then I like having a more of a welcome sequence over here that's like, what are the questions they're going to have in the first, week or two? Great, let's just send them a few emails with like, oh, you're joining, your first group call with Maggie today. So we actually have that email. When someone signs up, the morning of their first group call with me, they get an email that says, hey, it's your first, Evergreen Empire call today. Here's what to expect. Because people are like, oh, do I have to submit a question? What can I ask? How much time do I get? How does it work? Blah, blah, blah. So let's make that easier for them and tell them. So this is like a very, very simple flow. I'm not a huge fan of making things too complicated. I said this to my client as well. When we're doing this part, let's start with the MVP, the minimum viable product. So what should this automation just look like now for it to work? And honestly, by taking this step out and making this standardized, by making this section automation, because this was a manual step they were struggling with their CRM system, and they were losing a lot of money over here because they weren't following up on past leads. Like that all can be automated again with a tag, right? So client finishes, gets tagged, past client, gets added to a nurture sequence in ConvertKit. And here you can decide like, hey, we want to send an email every, 6 weeks about trademarks or whatever. And you can also make a task inside their CRM system or inside Slack or whatever they're using with, hey, 6 weeks in, like follow up with the client, right? Or ask for a referral, all these things. So I think this is kind of what I want to walk you through. This feels very basic, but that's what I'm saying. Like, it really, really depends on what you're trying to automate and what your process looks like. This is what I would do with like my clients. This would be like version 1, and then as time goes on, and this has been built out, great. Let's automate more. Like, do we have an appointment setter? Can we call them like at this step? What's happening before here for them to become a client? What does that automation look like? And so you're adding in, what can we automate? What can we simplify? Where do we need a human touch point? And you're slowly building that and making it better and better. So hope that that's useful. If this sounds like something you want help with, then grab your free game plan call. It's 45 minutes with me or with Michael, my husband, who's, sales trainer extraordinaire. And we can talk about how we can help you save a lot more time in your business. Something like this, I think, would save my client probably 10 hours a week for his team. And therefore give him a lot of mental capacity back. And if you want my client onboarding playbook, then drop me a line below this video and I will send it over.